At 90 years old, Sophia Loren just stepped into the spotlight again, and the world gasped. Cameras flashed. Jaws dropped. And for a moment, time itself seemed to pause. Because what we saw wasn't just a woman aging with grace. We saw a living legend defy everything we thought we knew about beauty, resilience, and the passage of time. Sophia Loren isn't just surviving, she's shining. In an industry that forgets its icons, she remains unforgettable. But how did a girl born in war-torn Naples, once called too strange to be beautiful, become the very definition of timeless elegance? And how is it that now, at 90, she looks like this, commanding red carpets, radiating wisdom, and turning every appearance into an event? This is not just a story about fame. This is a story about fire, about pain, power, reinvention, and why Sophia Loren is still the moment, even now, especially now. The gasp heard around the world. The world wasn't prepared for what happened that night in Rome. The air was thick with expectation, 1,000 flashbulbs already flickering in anticipation, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have braced the crowd for the moment Sophia Loren stepped out of the car. The velvet of the evening wrapped around her like a whisper, but her presence cut through the silence like thunder. Draped in a black gown that shimmered with understated elegance, she stood tall, poised, regal. 90. The number echoed in everyone's minds like a dare. How could this be possible? Her skin still glowed with the softness of memory. Her smile held the kind of defiance only a woman who has seen the rise and fall of empires can wear. And her eyes, those unmistakable eyes, still carried the weight of stories not yet told, of wars survived, of love protected, of decades that tried and failed to dim her flame. The photographers couldn't keep up. Every angle of her told a different version of beauty, one that wasn't crafted in youth, but carved from time. There was no cosmetic trick that could explain her radiance. It wasn't illusion. It was legacy. The room shifted the moment she entered. Younger actresses paused mid-sentence. Designers stared with open mouths. Journalists fumbled for words, for metaphors big enough to capture what they were seeing. Sophia Loren hadn't just shown up, she had arrived all over again. At 90 years old, she wasn't clinging to relevance. She was redefining it. It wasn't the first time she'd stopped a crowd. But this time, the gasp wasn't just about her beauty. It was about endurance, survival, about how a woman who had faced the bombs of Naples as a child, the cruelty of public judgment, the tragedy of miscarriages, the scandal of forbidden love, and the loneliness of growing old in an industry addicted to youth, could still stand like this, not as a relic, but as a revelation. That gasp, the one heard around the world, wasn't just shock. It was reverence. It was generations recognizing something rare, something raw. In that moment, Sophia Loren wasn't just a movie star from another time. She was proof that time itself bows to presence. And presence, true presence, cannot be taught, bought, or replicated. It is earned. It is survived. And she had survived everything. When the interviewers reached her that night, someone asked what her secret was. She smiled softly, the corners of her mouth lifting in that same mischievous, knowing way that once disarmed Cary Grant. "I never let the world tell me when to stop," she said. And just like that, the room fell silent again, because they realized it wasn't a secret. It was a warning. Sophia Loren hadn't aged into invisibility. She had aged into immortality. And at 90, she wasn't finished. She was just getting started. A girl named Sophia from war-torn Naples. Long before the cameras, before the gowns, before the world learned to pronounce her name with awe, there was only rubble and hunger. The Sophia Loren who commands rooms at 90 began as Sophia Villani Sticolone, a frail girl born in a hospital for unwed mothers in the outskirts of Rome. Raised in the bomb-scarred alleys of Naples during World War II, her mother, Romilda, was a piano teacher and a failed actress. A woman who had once turned down a Hollywood contract for a love that never stayed. Her father abandoned them both. Sophia grew up with no surname from him, no security, and no sense that the world owed her anything. Just silence, just hunger, just survival. They lived with 12 others in a single room in Pozzuoli. Sophia slept in a corner behind a curtain, and meals were as scarce as hope. At night, bombs thundered through the skies and shook the walls. Food lines stretched for blocks, and shoes were a luxury no one could afford. Sophia was thin, painfully so, with wide eyes that held more sadness than a child should ever carry. She was called Toothpick and Olive Oil Bottle. Even her teachers looked at her with pity. But her mother saw something else. Beauty, not the kind that turns heads, but the kind that survives hardship. Romilda would take her to local contests, push her into pageants, dress her in old dresses stitched back together. Not out of vanity, but out of desperation. They needed money. They needed a miracle. When Sophia was struck in the chin by flying shrapnel during a raid, the scar that remained became the very curve that would one day define her legendary face. She was mocked for her full lips and strong jawline, told she looked too Mediterranean, too intense, too everything. Yet her mother kept saying, "One day they will see what I see," and eventually, someone did. It was at a beauty pageant, one of many, that Sophia caught the eye of the film world. She did not win, but she was noticed. The way she moved, quietly but with gravity, as if even at 15, she was already carrying a century of life. Her face was unlike anything cinema had embraced before. She did not fit into the polished molds of American starlets. She was thunder in a soft voice, a storm disguised as a smile. And for the first time, someone told her she could be something more. But becoming Sophia Loren meant leaving behind the broken shoes, the powdered milk, the shame of fatherlessness, and every insult that clung to her like soot. It meant stepping into a world that would try to use her, rename her, tame her. She would fight back with elegance, with silence, with eyes that remembered everything. Before she could ever make the world gasp, she had to learn to walk through fire. And she did. Every step out of Naples was a step into destiny. When beauty wasn't enough, the fire that carried her out of Naples did not burn gently, it scorched. And once Sophia left the ruins of war behind, she stepped into a new battlefield where poverty was replaced by scrutiny and silence was drowned out by judgment. The girl who once scavenged for bread now faced a world that demanded she be perfect. But the world had never seen a face like hers. At 17, with a new name whispered into existence by a producer's pen, Sophia Loren became a contradiction. Too exotic to be conventional, too raw to be safe. Casting directors narrowed their eyes. Her lips were too full, her eyes too intense, her body too curvaceous. She didn't fit the formula. She broke it. And they didn't like that. In rooms lined with cigarette smoke and false smiles, she heard things that would have shattered a weaker spirit. She was called vulgar, not elegant enough, not polished enough. They suggested surgeries. They pushed her to speak less, smile more, be softer, be smaller. She refused all of it. She once said, "I'd rather eat pasta and drink wine than be a size 0. But this defiance came at a cost. For years, she was given bit parts, maid roles, background beauty. She was the girl whose face they couldn't forget, but whose name they wouldn't yet give top billing. Her mother urged patience. Her agents urged assimilation. But Sophia understood something they did not. She was not born to blend in. She was born to stand out. She trained in secret, voice lessons to soften her accent, acting classes to learn not how to pretend, but how to remember. Because every role she would ever play was colored by the girl she had been, the one who heard bombs fall and knew hunger by name. You cannot teach that kind of depth. You can only survive it. And Sophia survived it all. When they tried to dim her, she burned brighter. When they labeled her too much, she became more. She was not trying to win their approval. She was building armor. Then came the screen tests. The long hours under hot lights, the rehearsals where she had to prove again and again that she was not just a face. She was a storm in human form. Directors started to take notice. Not because she followed their script, but because she brought something they could not control. Emotion that felt lived in, beauty that carried wounds. She wasn't acting, she was remembering. She gave her pain posture and called it poise. When the offers finally started to grow, they still came with conditions. She turned many down. She would not undress for attention. She would not shrink for acceptance. She was not the fantasy. She was the reality too fierce to ignore. And that was when they began to realize. Sophia Loren was not going to be another fleeting face on a poster. She was going to be unforgettable. The discovery that changed everything. She had begun to rise, slowly, stubbornly, like something sacred blooming in concrete. But even as Sophia Loren fought for roles, fought to be seen, fought to stay herself in an industry that demanded compromise, there was one force that would shift her life more profoundly than any casting call ever could. His name was Carlo Ponti. He was already a man of stature in the film world. Older, successful, brilliant, and controversial. When he first met Sophia, she was barely 19. He was nearly twice her age and already married. To the world, he was a man with too much to lose. To Sophia, he was the first person who truly saw her. He did not see a girl who needed reshaping. He saw power. He saw potential. He saw a star still learning how to hold her own gravity. Where others saw an actress who would fit the mold, Carlo saw an actress who could break it. Their relationship was not simple. It was not safe. It was, by all social standards, scandalous. He was separated from his wife, but not divorced. Italy's laws at the time made legal separation nearly impossible. And yet, Sophia stayed. Not because she needed saving, but because she had finally met someone who did not want to save her. He wanted to build with her. Carlo became more than a mentor. He became her mirror. He challenged her to aim higher, to choose roles that hurt to play, to step into characters that frightened her. He guided her, but never owned her. The tabloids twisted their story, painting her as the other woman, the home wrecker, the young starlet chasing power. They did not see the quiet mornings, the letters passed in secret, the deep and patient friendship that grew long before they could legally be together. Sophia said little to the press. She had learned early that silence could be stronger than defense. It took nearly 10 years for the law to bend. A complicated legal process forced Carlo to obtain French citizenship so he could legally divorce and remarry. The Vatican condemned their union. Moralists called it sinful. But Sophia stood beside him. She would not let the world dictate the terms of her love. And when they finally married, privately and without apology, she was not the wide-eyed girl from Pozzuoli anymore. She was a woman who had already known loss and rejection, and she had chosen love that was worth the wait. Carlo did not build Sophia Loren. He protected her flame while she lit her own sky. Together, they became one of the most powerful pairs in European cinema. But behind the scenes, they were quieter than people imagined. No stage displays, no public scandals. Just two people who had fought for a bond most said could never survive. But it did. For over 50 years, in an industry where everything fades, that kind of devotion became its own kind of legend. And Sophia Loren had already learned how to carry a legend. The rise of an international goddess. With Carlo beside her and silence as her armor, Sophia Loren stepped into the arena that once doubted her and set it ablaze. Hollywood had long been a fortress built for blondes with polished smiles and American accents. But Sophia entered like a storm, dressed in elegance. She did not beg to be let in. She arrived as if she already belonged. It was not just her beauty that set her apart. It was the weight she carried in her gaze. Every time she looked into a camera, the audience saw not just the character, but the girl from Pozzuoli, the survivor, the fighter, the flame that refused to flicker out. In the early 1950s, she began to land larger roles in Italian cinema. Films like Aida and Two Nights with Cleopatra displayed her range. But it was her unapologetic sensuality and emotional power in the gold of Naples that made people truly begin to notice. She did not play women who existed for male attention. She played women who commanded attention. Women who laughed, wept, seduced, screamed, and prayed with equal power. She carried them all with fire. Then came the crossover. Hollywood finally opened its gates, and Sophia walked through them with grace sharpened into steel. She starred opposite the greatest leading men of the time: Cary Grant, Clark Gable, Frank Sinatra, Marlon Brando. They admired her. Some even fell in love with her. But Sophia never lost her center. When Cary Grant proposed marriage during the filming of The Pride and the Passion, she said no. She was already tied to Carlo in spirit, and her loyalty would not be shaken by fame or flattery. Even in a world built on illusion, she refused to betray her truth. But it was not just her presence that made her unstoppable. It was her willingness to go deeper. In 1960, director Vittorio De Sica handed her a script that would demand everything. Two Women was not a glamorous film. It was brutal. It told the story of a mother trying to protect her daughter during the horrors of war, only to face the unthinkable. Sophia played Caesira with no vanity, no filter, only raw truth. It was a role no other actress wanted. It was too dark, too real. But for Sophia, it was personal. She had lived through bombings. She had known fear. She had seen women break and still keep going. Her performance stunned the world. When the Academy awarded her the Oscar for Best Actress, it marked a turning point in film history. She became the first person ever to win an acting Oscar for a foreign language performance. In a single night, the girl once mocked for her face and accent became a global goddess. Not a product, not a starlet, a force. Sophia Loren had not just entered the spotlight. She had reshaped it. And now, the whole world was watching, not just in awe, but with reverence. She had arrived, and she was only beginning. Behind the curtains, love, scandal, and devotion. While the world applauded while the golden statues piled and her face graced the covers of magazines in every language, Sophia Loren carried a secret life behind the cameras that was far less polished than the roles she portrayed. Her love with Carlo Ponti remained a storm quietly raging beneath every headline. The world called it scandal. The Vatican called it sin. But for Sophia, it was simply devotion. Their bond, born in whispers and forged in fire, had become the anchor that kept her grounded in a world built to win more women like her. They could not marry in Italy. The law refused to dissolve Carlo's first marriage, even though he had been separated for years. To be with Sophia legally, he had to give up his Italian citizenship and become French. He did it not for politics. He did it for her. In 1966, they married in France under a veil of controversy. For years, Sophia endured criticism from the very culture she had risen from. Italy, the land of her mother tongue and childhood trauma, now saw her as a woman living in moral rebellion. The church publicly condemned the union. Strangers wrote letters filled with judgment, and yet she never flinched. She once said, "I have never felt ashamed of loving him, not for one day." And in those words lived the truth of everything she had been through. This was not the fleeting romance of cinema. This was the quiet, lifelong fire of two people who had chosen each other against every odd. Carlo stood beside her through the rise and the reinventions, through the rumors and the roles. He was her confidant, her counsel, and the only one who could challenge her without threatening her light. The scandal that followed them never fully disappeared, but they made peace with it by building a world that did not need the public's approval. They raised two sons, Carlo Jr. and Eduardo, with a fierce sense of privacy. They shielded their children from the glare of the spotlight. Family was sacred, not for display. Sophia cooked every meal. She walked them to school. She was not playing a part. She was a mother, devoted and protective, grounding them in a home untouched by the chaos that had shaped her. Their love was not loud. It was enduring. In an industry where relationships flickered and faded like flashbulbs, theirs burned steady. For more than 50 years, they stayed together. Not perfectly, but faithfully. And when Carlo grew ill in his later years, Sophia stepped back from the spotlight without a single press release or headline. She cared for him in silence. When he passed in 2007, a part of her disappeared too. But the legacy of their love, once called scandalous, had transformed into something almost mythic, not because it defied tradition, but because it outlasted it. Behind the beauty, behind the fame, behind the glass of every Golden Award, was a woman who chose love every single time and never once looked back. Tragedies she never talks about. Even legends carry shadows, and Sophia Loren's shine was not without its silence. Behind the red carpet smiles and graceful gowns, behind the history-making performances and the steady devotion to Carlo Ponti, there were wounds so deep she rarely spoke of them. Tragedies that shaped her more than applause ever could. She once said that grief has its own language, and hers was spoken in quiet tears and unanswered prayers. In her early years of marriage, as she longed to build a family, Sophia suffered not one, but 2 miscarriages. They happened away from the cameras, in quiet hospital rooms where the only witnesses were cold walls and the ache of what might have been. She had dreamed of motherhood the way a starving child dreams of bread. To lose those dreams twice nearly broke her. When she finally gave birth to her first son, Carlo Jr., in 1968, the world saw only the triumph, but they did not see the fear that lingered in her every breath. Every cry from her newborn filled her with both joy and terror. When her second son, Eduardo, arrived in 1973, the silence inside her began to soften. Still, the pain of what had been lost never truly left. Even decades later, her voice would tremble if she was asked about those early losses. Because some griefs never become stories. They remain quiet companions. But loss would not only find her in hospitals. In 1982, while shooting in Italy, Sophia was arrested and sentenced to 30 days in prison for tax evasion. She was 47, still one of the most famous women in the world, and yet she found herself behind bars. The charges were later proven to be the result of a clerical mistake, but the humiliation was public and the damage done. She served 17 days in a women's prison. No makeup, no gowns, just concrete and steel. She later said it taught her that even the most glittering life can be shattered in an instant. And yet, when she was released, she walked out with her head high, her pride intact. She had faced injustice before. This was simply another room she had to survive. Then came the slow loss that creeps in when time becomes the thief. As Carlo aged, his mind began to fade. She cared for him for years as he declined, often disappearing from the public eye without explanation. The woman the world saw as immortal became a caretaker, her days filled with medication schedules and whispered encouragements. When he died in 2007, she did not give interviews. She did not make statements. She grieved as she had lived through every storm, quietly, with dignity, with strength no camera could ever fully capture. These were the chapters of her life the world never applauded, but they were the ones that defined her most. Because true greatness is not how you rise. It is how you keep going when no one sees you fall. Her sons, her sanctuary. After the quiet storms and private losses, after the prison walls and hospital rooms, there remained one place in Sophia Loren's life, untouched by the chaos of fame. Her sons. They were not born into perfection. They were born into a legacy that began in rubble and rose into royalty. But Sophia never let them forget the woman she was before the world knew her name. She taught them not through words, but through presence. At home, she was not the international star. She was simply Mama. She cooked their meals from scratch. She packed their lunches. She sat at the edge of their beds and told stories in the dark. Her sons were never accessories to a glamorous life. They were her reason for stepping away from the stage when it was time. And it was always her decision. Not Hollywood's, not age, not critics, hers. Carlo Jr., the eldest, grew up with the mind of a scholar and the discipline of a conductor. He would become a renowned orchestral director, commanding music with the same grace his mother brought to film. Eduardo, the younger, found his rhythm behind the camera. A quiet artist who would one day direct the very film that brought his mother back to the screen. They were different men, yet deeply similar in the way they moved with purpose. Sophia often said that her greatest success was not any award, not any role, but the men her sons became. She raised them with patience, with strength, and with a devotion she never sought credit for. She did not need the world to see, she only needed them to feel it. Even in their adult years, Sophia remained the center of their world. They walked red carpets together, not as props in a photo opportunity, but as a unit bound by loyalty. During interviews, they never spoke in rehearsed admiration. They spoke of her like a lighthouse, the one that kept shining even when the waves came too hard. They saw the pain she never named. They watched her mourn in silence and still make lunch the next day. They knew what she gave up for them, not because she told them, but because she never complained. When Carlo Ponti became ill, it was her sons who saw their mother transform again. From movie star to caregiver. From icon to wife. She never left his side. Not for premieres. Not for press. The world wondered where Sophia Loren had gone. She had gone home. To protect. To love. To endure. The same way she always had. Her sons carried that memory into their own lives. And when they speak of her now, as she reaches 90, it is not her beauty they marvel at. It is her resilience, her fire, the way she loved them through every storm. In a life built on applause and illusion, her greatest legacy was the love she gave behind closed doors. And that love, more than any performance, will echo long after the lights dim. The comeback queen. Her sons had grown into their own worlds. Her husband was gone. The spotlight, once relentless, had moved on to younger faces with louder voices and shorter stories. For most, that would have been the quiet end, a graceful retreat into memory. But Sophia Loren was never meant to fade, not quietly, not ever. She had spent over 6 decades building a legacy shaped by elegance and grit. And in her late 80s, she chose to do something no one expected. She came back. It was not for money. It was not for attention. It was for meaning, for love, for the art that had once pulled her out of silence and handed her a voice. In the year 2020, the world sat still under a global pause. But Sophia Loren, now 86, returned to the screen in a film called The Life Ahead, directed by her son, Eduardo. The story was intimate, a tale of an aging Holocaust survivor who forms a bond with a young orphan from Senegal. The role was raw, unfiltered, and unafraid to show wrinkles and weariness. It was not a return to glamour. It was a return to truth. From the first frame, she was mesmerizing, not because she pretended to be young, but because she dared to be fully human. Her character, Madame Rosa, was a woman who had seen too much and loved anyway. A woman who had suffered quietly and survived fiercely. Sophia played her not as a performance, but as a reflection. It was not acting. It was remembering every heartbreak, every silent battle, every piece of herself that had never truly healed. And the world watched, stunned, as the 90-minute film reminded everyone that talent does not age. Only the world's perception does. Critics raved, awards buzz returned, younger actors bowed their heads in admiration. She did not shout her return. She whispered it. And it echoed louder than anything she had ever done in years. Sophia said that working with her son gave her the courage to come back. He saw her not as the icon, but as the woman who had lived every line she delivered. The set was quiet. No chaos, no ego, just a mother and son telling a story about broken people who find light in the dark. The success of The Life Ahead did not surprise those who knew her best. Sophia had always done her best work in roles that mirrored the depth of her own scars. This time was no different. It reminded the world that she was not frozen in time. She had evolved. A woman still capable of shaking the screen with nothing more than presence. Her comeback was not flashy. It was earned, and it was undeniable. Sophia Loren had returned. Not to reclaim her throne, but to remind us that she had never truly left. Some fires just burn slower, and when they return to the stage, they light up the whole sky. The secret behind the glow. After her breathtaking return in the life ahead, audiences could not stop asking the same question. How does she do it? How does Sophia Loren at 90 still carry that impossible glow, that effortless presence that makes the world lean in? The answer is not found in creams or cameras. It is not a miracle of lighting or a secret tucked inside some unreachable wardrobe. The secret is her life. Every scar, every silence, every moment she chose strength instead of surrender has become the light that now radiates from her. Sophia has never pretended that aging is easy. She has never claimed to be untouched by time. In fact, she speaks about it with the same honesty that shaped her films. She once said, "Beauty is how you feel inside, and it reflects in your eyes." It is not something physical for her. Beauty has always been born from resilience, from the discipline of joy, from choosing peace instead of bitterness, from loving her family fiercely, from walking away from things that did not feed her soul. She believes in laughter, in cooking, in dancing when no one is watching. Her mornings begin in quiet. She prepares her own meals, pasta, olive oil, fresh vegetables. She has never followed extreme diets. She has never punished her body for growing older. She honors it. She moves with grace because she has lived with gratitude. Her posture comes from ballet classes taken long ago and from the pride of surviving a world that once tried to shrink her. Her smile remains unchanged because it was never forced. It was built in childhood moments when joy was rare and therefore sacred. She has always loved music, poetry, long walks in silence. Her life has been full of noise, but she still returns to quiet whenever she can. That balance is her secret. She does not chase time. She moves with it. There are no surgeries to explain her glow, no youth elixirs, just choices. Daily faithful choices to love herself the way her mother once taught her to. She lets go of what she cannot control. She forgives without needing an apology. She believes in softness as strength. Her skin, her voice, her eyes all carry the memory of the woman she has been and the peace she fought to find. She once said that elegance is not being noticed. It is about being remembered. And perhaps that is the secret too. Sophia Loren never tried to compete with youth. She let herself grow. And in doing so, she became unforgettable. At 90, she does not walk into a room demanding attention. She arrives with a silence that says everything. A silence filled with years, with wisdom, with a glow that cannot be bottled. Because it is not a product. It is a life. And when people gasp upon seeing her, it is not disbelief. It is recognition of something rare, of a woman who never surrendered to time. She danced with it and won. Legacy in motion. Sophia at 90. The glow that turned heads at 90 was not a final curtain. It was a continuation. A quiet reminder that some legacies are not frozen in film reels or locked in golden statues. Some legacies move. They breathe. They evolve. And Sophia Loren's has never stopped becoming. At 90, she does not live in the past. She carries it with grace, but she does not linger there. Her days are not spent reliving old roles or replaying old praise. She moves forward with the same poise she brought to the screen, but now she walks at her own rhythm. Slower, softer, but never smaller. She remains present in the world without chasing its attention. Her public appearances are rare, but when she arrives, it is as if time itself pauses. The world leans in, whispers begin. There she is. Still here, still radiant, still Sophia. She does not need to speak to command a room. The curve of her smile, the lift of her chin, the light in her eyes. It says enough. She has nothing left to prove. And yet, she still inspires. Young actresses study her interviews. Directors speak her name with reverence. Fans from every generation still post her photographs, marveling at a face that time could not dim. But the real legacy is not her image. It is her spirit. It is the way she kept her soul intact through a lifetime of reinvention. It is the way she refused to let the world tell her who to be. In every role, in every heartbreak, in every quiet moment when no one was watching, she chose authenticity. That is what the world responds to. That is what the world remembers. Sophia lives today not as a legend on a shelf, but as a woman in motion. She visits museums, she gardens, she reads, she watches the sea. Her grandchildren know her not as the global icon, but as the grandmother who cooks too much and kisses too often. Her home is filled with music, not mirrors, with photographs that capture love, not fame. She is not chasing the next chapter. She is living it. And when she speaks now, in the rare interviews she grants, there is a softness to her words, a stillness in her tone. She does not speak of regret. She speaks of grace, of forgiveness, of letting go. She does not call herself brave, but she is. For every year she faced alone, for every judgment she outlived, for every moment she chose dignity over drama. At 90, Sophia Loren stands as a portrait of possibility, proof that age is not an erasure. It is a reward, a crown for every battle survived, a quiet victory over time itself. She has outlasted the eras that tried to define her, and now she defines herself. Every breath, every step, every elegant glance is a message. You do not fade when you live with truth. You shine, and she does. Still, always. Forever Sophia. Sophia Loren did not just survive the industry, she transcended it. From the ashes of war-torn Naples to the glittering stages of global fame, her journey was never about applause. It was about endurance, about rising with grace when the world expected her to break. Now, at 90, she remains a living testament to what it means to grow without losing yourself, to love without needing permission, to age without apology. Her life is not a chapter closed. It is a story still unfolding, written in the quiet strength of a woman who chose resilience over retreat. So, when the world gasps at Sophia Loren today, it is not just at her beauty. It is at her brilliance, her defiance, her flame. She is not simply remembered. She is still here, still luminous, still Sophia. And if time dares to watch closely, it will see what we all see, a legend still becoming. Please leave your comments in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.